Black fatigue, man. The world is tired of black people from South Africa to America to, you know, the whole world to China. Right? We saw a Chinese woman um, going crazy on racial slurs on a black woman in China. Right? The whole world has black fatigue, but the whole world forgets. The whole world forgets. Man, one of the OGs in the space, shout out Sergeant Willie Pete. He said America has the black people they deserve. America has the black people they deserve. So let's actually truly break let's truly break that down. America has the black people they deserve. Why? Why does America have the black people they deserve? Well, let's start with their false premise. The premise of black fatigue. All right. Let me get myself out the way so you can really see. What's the premise of black fatigue? The premise of black fatigue is we're tired of black people. They're always acting like animals, right? The YNs, that's the biggest one we're going to talk about today. The YNs, for those of you who don't know, YN stands for young nigga, right? Other black people are tired of other black people, right? Charleston White, the Coon twins, Candace Owens, right? And there might be some sound bites of them speaking, truth on a very small margin, right? Broken clock right twice a day, but they wrong, right? They're wrong, right? He should have complied. Illiterate monkeys, that's a favorite, right? He loved to victimize, especially now that we getting into the Carmelo Anthony stuff, man. You know what their premise is. We've heard their premise many times, but what's the truth? What's the truth, right? The truth is, for 400 plus years, right? Plus, they would not allow us to read or write. Shout out Pusha T. And hold on, he said, no reading, no writing, made a savage of men. They praying for jail, but I mastered the pen. And that right there encompasses so much. This encompasses so much in one sentence, right? They're the ones who didn't allow reading or writing, but that's what elevates a man. That's what elevates a woman. That's what elevates a child, right? They're the ones who created the jails in the manner they created them, right? But he mastered it in a different way, man. Penitentiary. I mean, some of y'all might be a little slow, right? But we're gonna dive into this a little bit because this is a serious topic that is very interesting. And a lot of Africans come into America without context. A lot of white people are upset without context. Also, a lot of young men and women, young children also do not have this context because they they don't have this form of education in the schools anymore, right? Now, before we get to that, they're tired of the YNs, right? But the truth is, they've been tired of black people this whole time, right? They've been tired of black people this whole time. Malcolm X wasn't a YN, right? Frederick Douglass wasn't a YN. Harriet Tubman wasn't a YN. They were tired. They had fatigue. Those three gave them a serious amount of fatigue. They had black fatigue then. Malcolm X wasn't looting. You know what I'm saying? Frederick Douglass wasn't looting. Harriet Tubman, she was looting. She was Harriet Tubman was thug. I mean, Harriet Tubman was about it, but she was freeing slaves. She was freeing people. She was freeing enslaved people, right? Martin Luther King was not a YN. Martin Luther King was a developed man, right? Stokely Carmichael, formerly known as Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture was not a YN. Francis Cress Welsing was not a ratchet. He wasn't a YN. Neither was Huey P. Newton. Neither was Fred Hampton. Neither was Neely Fuller. Neither was W.E.B. Du Bois. Du Bois for whoever, want to be a French stickler. Neither was Booker T. Washington, right? Neither a majority of the people that gave white people the most black fatigue were not YNs or ratchet or looters or no. They were very good people. They were very good people. And that posed a problem for them. Not only were they good people, because a lot of these quote unquote YNs are good people, but there's a particular problem. There's a particular problem, right? They 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 looked like good people. They looked like good people, right? Race was criminalized during the civil rights movement, but an argument I heard many times was how it worked was they played to the ethos of white America, and it kind of worked in a way, right? The whole world was watching white America gun church going folk, quote unquote church going folk, men in suits, right? This does not look like the ethos of an enslaved people, right? And they were coming out of slavery, right? This is Jim Crow, right? This is Jim Crow. I'm pretty sure this is Selma, right? This is Jim Crow. The ethos was one way, and that didn't sit right with the rest of the world, right? That didn't sit right with the rest of the world. But what did the rest of the world, and especially Africans, not know? You know, what did the rest of the world not know? Right? The rest of the world didn't understand the 13th Amendment. After slavery was abolished with the exception of those convicted of a crime. We already know about that, right? We already know about that, especially people here in America, right? Crime became a form of slave labor, right? But this is where things get interesting. This is where things get interesting. So, this is the problem. White America lost its black slave labor. Segregation also would have led to a far too independent black community that would have eventually, brought them into a sovereign state. Integration into the burning building helped put a stop to that, but they still needed their slave labor force back. They still needed their slave labor force back, right? But how could they get that? How could they get that? You know what I'm saying it's hard for them to do that. So what do they do? Right? We weren't enslaved. That was a process. That was almost 1,000-year process, right? We were not criminal. We were not, uneducated. We were miseducated. That was another couple 100-year process. We were not criminals. We were criminalized. That was another 50, 60-year process, right? And all of these processes were, done by them, right? They were done by them. The thing is, and this is one of the deeper conclusions that a lot of people don't understand. America has the black people it deserves because they continue to manufacture a group of black people that they could then criminalize using that loophole in the 13th Amendment, right? To then have more of their slave labor. They're tired of this brand they're tired of this brand of black person, right? They're tired of this YN, right? They're tired of this YN, but they created this YN. They're the ones that made savage of men by not allowing them to read or write. They're the ones that are trying to destroy the history. They're the ones that created drug combinations and implanted them in our neighborhoods. They're the ones that are so desperate for slave labor that they're willing to manufacture a group of people from that to that, right? They're the ones. But remember the top picture that hit their conscience too hard. Remember that hit their conscience way too hard. They couldn't justify that in their minds. They're like, man, dang, they're not criminal. They're not slaves anymore. They're not criminals anymore. We need criminals in order to fill these jails. But these guys aren't criminals. These top they're not criminals. They don't even look like them. Even though their criminals actually look like this. That's a totally different subject, man. The mob and the mafia, they had full blown suits, right? Totally different subject, right? But to manufacture conditions that not only destroyed images, destroyed ethnic images like locks, pure iconoclasm, right? Like locks. But they manufactured this. They're the ones that have record labels that own private prisons, that promote gangster music, that promote youth delinquency, that then lead to youth criminality and adult criminality. They're the ones that do that for their cheap labor. So white America can be mad as much as they want to about, black fatigue, but what you really should be tired of is your need for slave labor. You're not tired of slave labor, right? I saw somebody on Twitter say we should have picked our own cotton. It took you that long to come to that conclusion, fam. Like, and you mean like we're gonna discuss this more. Like I said, I'm not gonna do all these crazy presentations because most people don't have the attention span for that. But we definitely had to touch on that a little bit, man. Like, comment, subscribe, man. Shout out Sergeant Willie P too, man. America has the niggas they deserve, man. America has the niggas they deserve, and I hope these YNs give you hell. I hope these YNs give you hell. Because guess what? That was no different from what the Wild Wild West was like during the Manifest Destiny. Y'all was some gunslinging, unruly people. Gunslinging, unruly people. And you were hard to kill because of it. So these YNs actually might be the savior. So I'm not even, nah, man. These YNs, you deserve these YNs. If you want, if you want, if you want better black people, make sure, make sure you do not jail our fathers. Make sure you do not systematically oppress our stuff. Make sure you right your wrongs then. If you want better, if you want better black people, right your wrongs. It's just that simple. But you won't, so you're gonna complain. You know what I mean? But it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, comment, subscribe.